My question was regarding the online university you plan to create and the plans you have for that. And we spoke briefly last week, and I wanted to ask you, how can a student such as myself get involved with this process?
Yeah, well, an online university, that's perhaps a grandiose ambition, right? But one of the things that, so here's my rationale. You know, lots of things have dramatically transformed in the last 20 years, and whole swaths of enterprise has been wiped out. And that's happening at a more and more rapid rate as our technology progresses. Right now, newspapers are in the process of dying. I actually think they're in the process of committing suicide, but they're in the process of dying. And that's going to happen very rapidly. I think the Globe and Mail lost 10% of its readership in the last 3 months, something like that. And so what happens is that new technologies come along to supplant the old technologies. And I've watched a number of businesses fail, some large businesses. I knew some people who worked at Digital Equipment Corporation when it was failing, and I've had some inside track into failing businesses, and I see when they start to fail, the failure process tends to tip and then accelerate. It can happen unbelievably quickly. And this is what it looks to me, this is how it looks to me in relationship to the universities, especially in the US, although not only, especially in the humanities, although not only. So, number one. So I've recorded 3 years of my personality lectures, say. So let's say I have 3 years of lectures on Freud. Now, what I should do with those, I think, is edit them into one really good lecture on Freud. And then stop giving that lecture, because why would I give that lecture again? Because I've already given it, and it's edited, and it's in good shape. And if it's a really good lecture, then why does someone else have to give the lecture? Or why does 300 other people have to give a lecture on Freud? You know what I mean? What's going to happen is there's going to be some really good lectures on subjects, and that's all that people are going to need or want, because the internet tends to move things towards winner-take-all very, very rapidly. And so it seems to me that we're already at a point technologically where we could identify 100 things that people really need to know and do a sequence of lectures on those things that were outstanding, and then they could be updated and added to, but then it's like it's a done game, and it's free. So I started thinking about this last year when I noticed that my psychology lectures had 1 million views, and that was last April, and I thought, that's amazing, 1 million views. It's like, what the hell? I don't know what to make of that. That's the kind of best-selling book that you never write, because no one ever writes a best-selling book. So 1 million views, that's something to pay attention to, and now it's way more than that. But there's videos and podcasts, and that means that people can listen when they're doing other things too, and so that's really cool. And maybe people can listen better than they can read. That's a real possibility, because we've only been reading silently for about, well, most of humanity for less than 100 years, and virtually no one could read silently 500 years ago. It's a really new skill, and so maybe we're better at listening. And so all of a sudden there's the possibility of disseminating high-quality educational material, highly produced, highly vetted, to millions of people for nothing. Well, how are you going to compete with that? Then it's worse, because the humanities, which have become completely degenerate, almost completely degenerate in my estimation, have abandoned their valuable intellectual property, which is the collective wisdom, at least for the West, of Western civilization. It's just sitting there. Someone might as well steal it back. And then there's the student loan debacle in the United States, if that's pronounced properly. Debacle? Debacle? Okay. Obviously, I've read that word more than said it. And so, I had a guy write me today, and he asked if he should go to a private college for $22,000 a year to pursue an undergraduate in psychology, so that he could get into clinical graduate school or go to another university, the state university, for far less. I told him to go to the state university because it's the wise economic decision. But, it doesn't seem to me that it's reasonable at all to load people up when they're 22 with $100,000 in student debt that they cannot declare bankruptcy for. It's indentured servitude. And to load up people when they're 22 or 23 with debt of that magnitude, it's like, well, how the hell are they going to be entrepreneurs? How are you going to take a risk with a $100,000 debt load? And who's going to marry you? Well, really, Jesus, you know, because another story I heard recently was, well, I just got married to my partner. She brought into the marriage $120,000 in student debt. It's like, oh my God, it's like, that's crippling, man. Like, once you're making a substantial amount of money, if you're fortunate, maybe you're in your 40s, you could handle a debt load like that, but in your 20s, it's just crippling. So, you know, the tuition fees have ratcheted up like mad in the last 30 years. The colleges and universities have become unbelievably administratively top-heavy. They're regulated to death by the legislative system. So there's ethics committees, which are so counterproductive that it's just unbelievable. There's this entire whole new monstrous hyper-accommodation movement that borders on, I'll make a video about that soon enough. That's absolutely pathological. And there's this whole postmodern neo-Marxist idiocy that's going on in the universities. And so like, well, how many mistakes does an institute, plus students aren't being taught how to speak, they're not being taught how to debate, they're not being taught how to write, and they don't read difficult things. They read French intellectual postmodernists, right? And they probably don't read those either. They read secondarily derived, they skim secondarily derived papers about French intellectual postmodernists from the 1970s. And the standards have been lowered because there's too many people pursuing higher education. And so I think, okay, there's 8 dimensions of success, and on every single dimension there's failure. The system's done. And so the vision would be, why not provide everybody in the world with high quality education in the humanities for like 1/50th the cost? You can charge for accreditation. That's a whole separate issue, right, accreditation. But the resources, it's like, why not make them available to everyone? So that's the plan. I mean, I don't know if I can do it or not, but it's partly what I'm doing with this biblical lecture series. It's sort of putting my toe in the water. But I have a plan. And I have some good programmers who are willing to help, and there's lots of people out there that would help. God, I'm being flooded with offers of help. I'd love to take people up on the offers, but it's not that easy to get someone to help you do something, you know. So that'd be the plan. It's like, so what would the plan be? Give people a high-quality education in the classic humanities, teach them how to speak and write, accredit them for 1/10 the current cost, and do it with millions of people instead of tens of thousands.
So if you don't mind me asking, what plans do you have for the accreditation side where people can show something for what the time they spent watching?
Well, one of the things that I would do, for example, is imagine that you were in a course. And so you have taken an exam. Let's say it's a multiple choice exam just for the sake of argument, because they're simpler. The writing issue is a separate problem. Well, so one of the things that you would do if you enrolled in the course is generate multiple choice questions. That'd be one of your assignments. Here's a lecture, generate 10 multiple choice questions. Now you got 1,000 people generating 10 multiple choice questions. Well, then you can do, there are statistical procedures that help you figure out what valid multiple choice questions are. You could have people vote on them for that matter if you put them on a website. Assignment number 2, here's 100 multiple choice questions. Pick the 10 that you think are most representative of the knowledge that you've acquired. Get 100 people to do that. So you get crowdsource the test construction. And then you could keep making the test better and better as well, because you could build that. I'd like to build a system so that it was self-improving with a minimum of administrative interference. And so then what would happen is that as you got accredited, so you start writing exams and maybe you write more and more of them, then you'd start to buy voting power with regards to the content of the courses, and maybe even the right to produce courses to put them up online. So it's something like that. But our strategy would be to build, we want to build a system that's basically autonomous and self-improving right from the beginning. So minimum of administrative overhead, extremely low cost, widespread availability, crowdsourced in its structure, and autonomously self-improving. I think we can do that. I don't know if I can do it, but I think we have the technology to do that. And then you think, well, so here's the plan, you know, because I'm always thinking of the point B. What's a good thing to do with life? Well, the good thing to do with your life is the most difficult goddamn thing you can think of that would do the most possible good. That'll get you up in the morning. And so, because you think, why should I get up in the morning? It's like, well, you know, I've got 50 million people to educate. Hey, that'll do it. Really, you know, that'll overcome a lot of angst, that sort of thinking. So, well, so it seems to me that it's inevitable. Now, whether or not I can do it, that's a whole different story, but I can certainly start it. And I'm going to start it. My partner, my business partner, the guy who helped me develop the self-authoring program, which thousands of people are using that now. And we've helped tens of thousands of students now stay in universities, so that's really cool. Well, maybe not, given the state of the universities, but I'm contributing to the problem. But, you know, but they're sticking out their plans. That's the point. They're actually making plans and sticking them out. So I think that we can, and we know how to start small, because the way to build a big system is to build a small system that works and then scale it. And so I've been talking with my partner. His name is Daniel Higgins. I have another partner, Bob Peel, who used to be my graduate supervisor at McGill, and we've been working on this sort of thing for about 25 years, and our goal has been right from the beginning to build low-cost, high-quality psychoeducational interventions and bring them to as wide a market as possible. So, and Daniel in particular has devoted most of his life to doing that. It's been about 20 years now. So well, that's a sketch of it. I'll outline more of it on the web at some point, but that's kind of what we've been deciding, what we've been planning to do.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep.